It's July 8th already, 2021. My name is Mark Nejma. I'm from Newsweed.com. Our summer is slipping by us. Probably the most important story in the news today is the death of President Moise from Haiti. 6 suspects have been found. Altogether, the last 2 were dragged through the streets by some young men until the police came and took them in. Haitian police said they killed 4 suspects and detained 2 others late Wednesday amid an ongoing manhunt for a group of mercenaries involved in a brazen assassination of President Jovenel Moise, which also left his wife critically wounded. The uncertain security situation in Haiti was matched by an equal chaotic political standoff. The interim prime minister, Claude Joseph, declared a state of siege akin to martial law and said he was in charge of the country, even as he claimed to power came into question. Haitian police on Thursday captured 2 more men who officials said are among the suspects in the assassination of the president. Why was he killed? That's a good question. But Haiti is known as a avenue for moving drugs through and a country that has always had corruption. Who's to say what happened? But certainly this is a horrible thing when we see leaders of countries murdered. This was a highly coordinated attack by a highly trained and heavily armed group. Both Spanish and English were spoken, as well as the Haitian French Creole, who's in Haiti, which is the primary language. The 2 suspects arrested Thursday have Latino appearances. Now, the Dominican Republic is right next to Haiti, so they could be Dominican, or they could be from another country. 4 suspected killers of the president were fatally shot by national police in a gun battle in the affluent district where Mr. Moise resided. Haiti Police Chief Leon Charles said Wednesday evening 2 others had been captured Wednesday. Security forces also freed 3 police officers who had been held hostage by the alleged killers of the president, Mr. Charles said in a televised address. The arrests come as authorities closed airports and the country's border with the Dominican Republic after declaring a 2-week state of siege. Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, has roiled by lawlessness, political turmoil, gang violence, and a contracting economy under Mr. Moise. The unrest deepened in recent months when the president was narrowly elected in 2016. Let's face it, Haiti is a great place that could be developed into a tremendous travel point of interest. It's a shame that this country never can get it together. And it's also a shame that America does not step up to try to straighten out the problems in the Dominican Republic as well in Haiti. Michael Avenati is a person that has been convicted and sentenced to 30 months. If you remember, Michael Avenati was an attorney that was very much against President Trump, bringing a woman against President Trump and a lawsuit which never panned out for him. And then Mr. Avenatti apparently tried to extort money from Nike and was caught. See you later, Mr. Avenatti. I don't think you're going to like jail too much. I mean, I can't believe an attorney would go to jail, but I guess he deserved to. Don't forget that, if we run back to Haiti, don't forget that the Haitian death squad leader, Emmanuel Toto Constant, who once credited Voodoo and CIA for protecting him, arrived back in Haiti a couple weeks back on a Tuesday. After nearly 26 years of fleeing the country on Christmas Eve, he came to the United States. Constant's 1994 flight to freedom came with the aid of U.S. visa via Puerto Rico, and 2 months after the Clinton administration returned deposed President Jean-Bertrand Aristide to power with the support of 20,000 U.S. soldiers, and Constant's armed attachés played a pivotal role a year earlier. It just seems such a coincidence that suddenly the current president is murdered after the Haitian death squad leader, Emmanuel Toto Constant, returned. I certainly do hope that the United States had nothing to do with the murder of the Haitian president. And I hope that the CIA had nothing to do with the Haitian president's murder as well. It's just bad karma. In India, uh, it seems like they're past the peak of the latest coronavirus surge, but some other countries in Asia are experiencing rising infections. The Delta variant is contributing to a rapid rise in case numbers in Indonesia, where a crisis over oxygen supplies is unfolding. Meanwhile, vaccination rates across the region remain generally low amidst concerns that the variant is spreading. What's happened to the case numbers? Well, the World Health Organization recently deemed the Delta variant, which is originated in India, the most transmissible of the variants identified so far. Some of India's immediate neighbors, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, saw surges in infections in May. Nepal was particularly badly hit with a dramatic surge in infections, overwhelming the local health infrastructure. Indonesia imposed a lockdown in parts of the country until July 20th. Indonesia faces huge oxygen crisis amid the COVID surge. Bangladesh, on the other hand, which has a longer border with India, has experienced an upward trend since mid-May. A government study looking at the period from May 25th to June 7th showed that 68% of the cases detected in the capital, Dhaka, were on the Delta variant. It has implemented a national lockdown after concerns about the variant. A lot of trouble with this COVID. We got to get to the bottom of it, or else we'll never be able to ride on top of the trains in India, which is what I'd like to do. In Thailand, the recent rise in cases and deaths in Thailand have attributed in part to the Delta variant by the country's Department of Medical Sciences. Earlier this week, the department said 26% of total cases reported in the capital, Bangkok, in the past week were identified as the Delta variant. Thailand welcomes first quarantine tourists. However, they're letting tourists back into Thailand. There are some beautiful islands there, but you're going to have to quarantine first, so your trip might be a little longer. In Mongolia, the country has a relatively high level of vaccination, with more than 50% of the population fully vaccinated, most with the Chinese-made Sinopharm vaccine. The high vaccination rate comes after a promise by the government of COVID-free summer, but recent spikes in cases and deaths have been one of the highest in Asia per head of population. Now, from what I understand, the vaccines have melanoma and lymphoma substance in it, and that it may not be the best thing for you. As you know, we mostly have emergency use authorization for these vaccines and no full FDA authorization. I suppose the politicians are scared and they don't want to be blamed, but things just seem to be a little out of hand with the COVID. Now, the other big story that's been on the newspapers for quite a while now is the collapse in Miami. You know that they've torn down the building in Miami, the other part that wasn't fallen. In my opinion, they could have destroyed evidence. Clearly, it was a structural problem. I did, however, hear the head of the Department of Energy today imply that it could have been related to climate. Another politician like sticking their foot in their mouth, implying that maybe it could be according to for the fault of climate. It is just ridiculous. Buildings don't fall down because it rains. Anyway, 60 people now are confirmed dead, and they are moving slowly through the wreckage of the building, and something just doesn't seem logical down there, but let's move on. Kamala Harris still wants to push back on voter ID laws. Let me ask you a question. If you're going to vote, do you think we should know who you are, or at least that you're a citizen, so that you have the legal right to vote? Or are you going to give us this argument that, I lost my ID? It reminds me of my friend Gary. Every time we went out to dinner, he lost his wallet. He never paid. It's sort of like the same thing with this voting. If you don't have an ID, you should not be able to vote. I don't care if you mailed it in or not. Sorry, you can't vote. This is what people in America get upset about. Come on, there's no common sense. Why is an elected vice president saying they're worried about the ID laws? We want to know who the people are, or else you can't vote. If I worked at those poll booths, I'd say, stop, you can't vote. Then they'd probably lock me up. Over in Austin, a man died late Wednesday night after being found with a gunshot wound at North Austin apartment complex. That's Austin, Texas. Yeehaw. Police say someone called them at around 10:40 p.m. to say the man was bleeding out and needed help. When officers arrived at the complex at Swallow Court, they found the man had been shot. He died shortly afterwards. Government Motors, General Motors is recalling more than 331,000 diesel pickup trucks in the U.S. for a second time because the engine block heater cords can short circuit and cause fires. Come on, GM, get it together. Last story is a story out of Chicago. Northwestern University says that it's committed to minimizing the university's environmental footprint, and understanding the current impact is the first step in the process. An annual comprehensive greenhouse gas emissions inventory is developed to track the university's emissions dating back to 2012. Northwestern calculated the emissions inventory with support from Sightlines, a consulting group that must have cost big bucks, that helped with data analysis and reporting using the sustainability indicator. What do you need all this for? Turn the lights off, turn the heat down, and close the windows, and maybe don't have such giant buildings on the campus. That'll cut it down. But you paid a consultant anyway, so good for you. They came up with 3 scopes for this sustainability. These greenhouse gas emissions are divided into 3 categories. Scope 1 includes direct emissions from sources that are owned or controlled by Northwestern. This scope includes emissions from the combustion of natural gas used for heating and cooling campus buildings. Scope 2. Emissions are indirect emissions from sources upstream from the university. This includes emissions associated with the generation of electricity. So wait a second, you're going to calculate the emissions on campus and then calculate the stuff that's generated upstream. Got it. Scope 3 is emissions that come from sources that are not owned or directly controlled by Northwestern. As far as I'm concerned, it's none of your business then. Anyway, these include commuting, business travel, and waste travel. Waste disposal. Now, waste disposal is an area I think that really should be looked into. We need great fertilizer. We should be separating our food, our bones, our leftover sandwiches, everything in one pile, then have our plastics in another pile, then our metals in another pile, papers over there. We can do a much better job with recycling. And it's not very political because I don't think anybody can really make money at it. But that's where I think things should go. Anyway, on Northwestern's campus, collecting the information to quantify university's greenhouse gas emission is a campus-wide effort. My brother Georgie's over there working, so he better be recycling, and I'm going to recommend he rides his bike to work. Well, that's the news today for July 8th, 2021. We got it done pretty early today, and I hope you'll watch it and enjoy it. Thanks. I got to drive to Connecticut now. Bye.